When fans look at Sam Heughan today, the tall, charismatic Scot who brings Jamie Fraser to life in Outlander, it's tempting to imagine that he must have had a childhood just as sweeping and romantic as the landscapes of the Highlands. After all, he often speaks of growing up near a castle, and the image practically writes itself. A boy running through stone corridors, the wind in his hair, the shadow of turrets falling across the grass. It sounds like something out of a fairy tale. But the reality of Sam Heughan's childhood was far more complex. In truth, it was a life balanced between beauty and hardship, between magic and struggle. And it was precisely these contrasts, this childhood that was both enchanting and painful, that would eventually shape the man he became and the character he would portray so powerfully on screen. Sam was born in Scotland, a land steeped in myth, history, and untamed natural beauty. His mother raised him and his brother alone, after their father left when Sam was still very young. Without the support of a father figure, the family had to make do with what they had, and what they had wasn't much. Their home was not some grand estate or castle hall, but a converted horse stable on the grounds of Castle Kenmure, overlooking the waters of Loch Ken. To outsiders, living on castle grounds might sound glamorous, like the beginning of a Disney story. But as Sam himself once admitted in a 2015 interview with Travel Plus Leisure, the truth was much less romantic. I lived in sort of old castle grounds and converted stables, which sounds much more glamorous than it actually was. Behind the picturesque description was a life marked by simplicity, modesty, and sometimes struggle. The converted stable was humble. There were no gilded walls or chandeliers, no luxuries one might associate with castle life. Instead, it was bare and practical. The winters in Scotland could be unforgiving, and heating was often minimal. Life wasn't always comfortable, but it was real. And in that raw reality, young Sam learned resilience. Yet even in hardship, there was beauty. Surrounded by the rugged hills, ancient woods, and the vast expanse of Loch Ken, Sam grew up in a landscape that encouraged imagination. The natural world became his playground and his escape. Without modern conveniences or constant entertainment, he turned to creativity and storytelling. The forest could become a battlefield, the lake a stage for adventure, the castle ruins a portal into history. That sense of freedom, that ability to let his imagination transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, would one day serve him well in acting. Still, there was a loneliness to this childhood. The isolation of living in such a remote environment, with only his brother and his hard-working mother for company, left plenty of quiet hours for reflection. Those silences, filled with both solitude and wonder, may have been painful at times, but they also deepened his emotional world. As any artist knows, creativity often blooms in spaces where solitude and yearning coexist. Sam's mother played a crucial role during these years. Raising two boys on her own was no easy task, but she provided the stability, encouragement, and love that carried them through. Her resilience became a model for Sam, teaching him that strength doesn't come from ease or privilege, but from perseverance in the face of challenge. Looking back, what stands out is the duality of it all. To say, "I grew up on castle grounds," sounds like a line from a fairy tale. But for Sam, it wasn't about grandeur, it was about survival. It was about growing up in a place that was beautiful to look at, but humbler and more difficult to live in than most people realize. And yet, it is exactly this blend of magic and hardship that makes his story so compelling. It wasn't a perfect childhood. It wasn't without pain, but it was authentic, and in that authenticity lies the foundation for his artistry. When Sam speaks of those years, he doesn't do so with bitterness. He recalls them with honesty, sometimes even humor, acknowledging both the difficulties and the gifts they gave him. In that stable by Loch Ken, he found not just shelter but a beginning that, while far from glamorous, would prepare him for the path ahead. It's easy for fans to fall in love with the idea of Jamie Fraser, the noble Highlander with a heart of steel and a soul full of love. But what makes Jamie so believable is that Sam himself knows what it means to live with both beauty and struggle. Long before the cameras, long before the fame, he lived his own story of resilience, shaped by a childhood that was as far from Hollywood glamour as one could imagine. When audiences first met Jamie Fraser in Outlander, they were captivated by his strength, resilience, and quiet depth. He wasn't just a handsome Highland warrior, he was a man of conviction, grounded in his land and heritage, someone who carried hardship with dignity. What made Jamie so authentic was not just the writing or the costumes, but the way Sam Heughan embodied him. And much of that, Sam has admitted, comes from his own childhood experiences. Growing up in the converted stables of Castle Kenmure, Sam understood what it meant to live without luxury. The absence of comforts taught him to value what he had and to endure what he lacked. That resilience is the very essence of Jamie Fraser. On screen, when Jamie faces imprisonment, exile, or the weight of protecting his clan, Sam doesn't need to invent what endurance feels like. He knows it firsthand. He understands what it means to draw strength from within, to survive and even thrive in less than ideal circumstances. Then there's the landscape. Outlander is as much about Scotland as it is about Claire and Jamie's love story. Sweeping hills, mist-covered lochs, stone ruins, it's a world steeped in history and myth. For Sam, these are not just backdrops. They are home. His childhood surrounded him with the same rugged beauty and sometimes unforgiving wilderness that Jamie inhabits in the 18th century. When he rides across the moors or stands guard at a Highland settlement, it isn't just acting, it's memory. He grew up breathing the cold Highland air, listening to the wind move through the trees, and letting the silence of wide open spaces shape his imagination. That sense of place runs through every frame of his performance. But perhaps most profoundly, Sam's childhood gave him empathy. Raised by a single mother who worked tirelessly to support him and his brother, Sam learned early on the value of sacrifice, of loyalty, and of love that goes beyond words. Those same qualities define Jamie Fraser's devotion to Claire, his family, and his people. Jamie is strong, yes, but he is also deeply compassionate, capable of profound tenderness. That balance between toughness and vulnerability is something Sam lived as a child, and now channels as an actor. Even the solitude of his upbringing shaped Jamie. As a boy with long stretches of quiet and isolation, Sam turned inward, letting his imagination fill the silence. That habit of reflection, of holding space for thought and feeling, is what gives Jamie his soulful presence. When Jamie looks at Claire with eyes full of unspoken emotion, it resonates because Sam himself knows the power of silence. Sam has often spoken with pride about Scotland's traditions, from wearing the kilt to appreciating whiskey. These weren't learned in adulthood as part of a role, they were part of his upbringing. The cultural heartbeat of Scotland was in his childhood, and it naturally infuses Jamie's every gesture. It's no wonder fans around the world believe so deeply in the character, because Sam isn't pretending. He's remembering. What's remarkable is that Sam doesn't frame his childhood as a hardship he had to overcome. Instead, he views it as a gift, the foundation that made him who he is today. He acknowledges the pain and challenges, but he also recognizes the freedom, the beauty, and the imagination it inspired. This perspective mirrors Jamie Fraser's own, a man who endures suffering but never lets it define him, who carries his scars with pride and turns them into strength. For fans, knowing this about Sam adds an even deeper layer to Outlander. Suddenly, Jamie isn't just a character on screen, he's an extension of Sam's own story. The boy who grew up in a stable, surrounded by history and hardship, became the man who could so authentically step into the shoes of an 18th-century Highlander. His performance is not just acting, but an expression of lived truth. And there's an inspiring message in that. Sam's journey reminds us that success doesn't require a glamorous beginning. You don't need to be born into wealth or privilege to make a global impact. Sometimes, it's the very lack of luxury, the very moments of struggle, that give a person the depth to touch others' hearts. Today, Sam Heughan is an international star, admired not only for his talent but also for his humility and grounded nature. Yet behind the fame is still that boy from Loch Ken, shaped by the beauty and the pain of a childhood that was both ordinary and extraordinary. And it is that boy, the dreamer in the stable, the child of Scotland's soil, who melts hearts every time Jamie Fraser steps onto the screen. Because when Sam plays Jamie, he isn't just performing. He's sharing a piece of his own soul, forged long ago in the shadows of a castle and the windswept hills of Scotland.